Australia have announced their T20 World Cup squad and big names have returned. The squad is filled with T20 stars and we will try and dissect it today. Hello, listeners, and welcome to a mini episode of the CricBlog Podcast. I have with me a very happy co host today, Charbel, whose wish of seeing Josh Inglis in Aussie colours will finally come true. How are you, Josh? How are you, Charbel? Sorry,
Josh.
I have Josh Inglis on my mind since this morning.
Everyone's got Josh Inglis on their mind today.
Yep.
Yeah, very good to see him. I would have liked to see him earlier, maybe West Indies and Bangladesh tours. I remember writing an article actually that, I listed some of the unlucky players to miss out from the squad and he was one of them. But we'll see what happens. He's his pick now. It might be a challenge if he makes his debut in a World Cup, but he's a fearless player. So it's exciting to see him there.
Yeah, absolutely. And first questions first, do you see any big surprises? Is the squad what you had expected it to be?
Yeah, a surprise for me is no Jai Richardson. I don't know if he's injured or anything like that, but no Jai Richardson's a bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah.
I think he's a very talented pace bowler.
Yeah. They haven't CA haven't told anything about Jai Richardson being injured.
No.
So he's likely dropped.
No. Another probably surprise is maybe having Daniel Sams there as a travelling reserve.
Yeah.
I don't think he set the world alight in international cricket. I think he's conceded like 90 runs in 6 overs at the death or something like that in T20 international. So,
absolutely.
Other than that, I don't see any major surprises. I was thinking, the guys that really struggled in Bangladesh, we were talking about them before, like the likes of Enriquez and Carey and these guys. I didn't expect them to be picked. Yeah. Not with the main players coming back. And overall, I think it's a pretty good squad. You know, and that's to be expected. The Australian first team is quite good, but it's what happens when a few players are missing, as we've seen in recent times, and then the depth is really tested and there's not much depth there. But from a first team perspective, it's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to your point about Daniel Sams, looking at the squad, there's quite a bit of bowling attack in the squad already, given Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Swepson, Zampa, Kane Richardson, Hazelwood, Stoinis can bowl. Ashton Agar has been pretty good. Mitchell Marsh. It's a really good, bowling lineup if you all things considered. So do you think Australia may have missed the trick here, not picking someone like a Josh Philippe instead of Daniel Sams, who could probably bolster their batting lineup as opposed to the bowling lineup?
Probably not, because I think Australia had a decision to make between the 3 wicketkeepers, the 3 first choice wicketkeepers in terms of Matt Wade, Alex Carey, Josh Philippe, and they thought probably Matt Wade's the one who's probably best equipped to bat in the middle. Middle order. Josh Philippe has got plenty of talent, but he's very untested in the middle order and quite untested in international cricket in a way. He hasn't really stepped up in international cricket.
But interesting you touched on Alex Carey. What are your thoughts about him being omitted?
Look, they see him as the future captain in Australian cricket, but how can you take someone who averages 11 in T20 internationals to a World Cup and someone who's really, struggling in that middle order, coming in those middle overs and getting going? Even when he opened the batting, he had the chances to open and he couldn't get going at all. He's just, he's got plenty of talent, Carey, plenty of talent, but I think you just need more consistency from him. He needs to show it more at international level like a number of others have to, because it's one thing doing it in the big bash, but you've got to do it absolutely at the highest level as well.
Yep. And the interesting thing about this squad is as well that there's 11 of the 18 that have been picked who have IPL contracts. So, but again, having said that, Pat Cummins is not going for the IPL because I think he's staying back for the child. Birth of his first child. So is this IPL being looked at by these players as a prep for the World Cup? Because obviously Kyle Jamieson from New Zealand have, just came out and said that I'm just looking at this from a T20 World Cup point of view.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why Cricket Australia has, I think paved the way for these players to play in the UAE before the World Cup. It's the best possible preparation in such a high quality tournament in the same conditions that you'll be playing in the World Cup, the same place. So for sure, that's going to be important. Eyes will be on the likes of Glenn Maxwell in particular. Hopefully he comes into the tournament off the back of the sort of form he showed for RCB in the first half of the tournament. The likes of... I want to see how Australia as well, talking about, maybe we can go into team composition a little bit here. We talk about the importance of the IPL for the Australian players, but also in terms of team composition. Discussing with a few friends today, it's like, what do you do with Mitchell Marsh now that Steve Smith?
Yeah,
interesting to see how he goes in the IPL if he goes. Steve Smith will probably bat 3 for Australia. Mitch Marsh batted very well there. He was probably the shining light in very difficult tours lately. What do you do there? You probably put Mitchell Marsh at number 5 or number 6, but he hasn't been that consistent in that position throughout his career. So even with this squad, I've said it before, with our full squad, I still worry about positions 5 to 7.
Yeah.
That finishing, because, we look at, it could be Glenn Maxwell, but he's awesome when he comes in over 7 to 15.
Yeah. Is it safe to say you don't back Marcus Stoinis to play that role?
Look, to his credit, I think he's improved in that role the last 12 months. Since the restart of cricket after COVID, I thought in the IPL last year, he showed some good signs. But then if you remember the back end of the last season's IPL, Delhi Capitals put him back to opener and thought probably that's where we can get the best out of Stoinis.
But I think that also stemmed from...
His position is opener.
Yeah, that also stemmed from his performance as an opener for Melbourne Stars in the previous Big Bash.
Correct. And that's his most probably preferred position, because the key for Stoinis in those conditions is getting started against spin.
Yeah.
And it goes for a number of players as well. They're very capable, but it's doing it on a consistent basis. That's going to be the challenge. If you want to win a tournament like this, you can't have a bad day in the crunch matches.
Yeah.
So, and especially when you consider the group stages, there's top 2 spots in a very competitive group. So you've got to be on your game all the time. So that's why this IPL coming up, I'm very interested to see how the likes of Steve Smith go.
Yeah.
And especially how the likes of Marcus Stoinis go. Because if he gets into some finishing form, that's going to be really good for Australia.
Moving on to the bowling side of things, quickly want to touch on the spinners. So they have picked 3 spinners, Ashton Agar, Adam Zampa, and Mitchell Swepson. You could argue Glenn Maxwell could give them a few overs here and there, but really these are the 3 spinners that Australia is going with to the UAE for the World Cup. So starting with 2 spinners, do you think the 2 leggies, or do you think a left-hander and a leggy?
No, I think Agar will play. I reckon Agar will get in the first choice team. I think he's been good the last 18 months in T20 cricket for Australia. He's been in the wickets and he can score some runs down the order too. So Agar, and then depending on conditions, you might look to maybe drop one of the main quicks.
Yeah.
Probably think your main quicks would be Hazelwood, Cummins, Stark. You probably, if conditions are really suiting spin, you go with your 2 leg spinners. You probably have to. But if conditions are similar to what they were in the UAE last year for the IPL, where it wasn't too spin friendly, but the seamers had a say as well, then you can have Hazelwood for the power play, Stark, Cummins as well there. That's a pretty good attack.
Yeah.
And then Zampa there.
Do you think in a place like UAE, they go in for a batting cover down the order and then pick 4 bowlers and then look at Maxwell, Marsh, and Stoinis for the 5th and 6th and 7th bowling option?
They could do that. Yes, they could do that. Particularly, if pitches are really slow, then you can get the likes of Stoinis and Mitch Marsh bowling cutters into the pitch. Because it remains to be seen how the pitches play, because of the IPL being played soon before that as well. So, but to the credit of the ground staff last year, I refer back to the IPL. It was a long tournament last year across 3 grounds. Yeah. But the pitches for the tournament were really good. You look at for the final, you look at for the eliminator, the playoffs. Even the back end of the tournament there, the pitches were still quite good. So it'd be interesting to see if that's the case again this year. Before we finish, I'd like to get your thoughts on the squad. What do you make of this Australian squad as an India fan?
Oh, I think it's a pretty. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a balanced squad, but it's not, it's not, there's no surprises there. I mean, we all knew once the superstars come back for Australia,
Yes.
we pretty much picked what it was going to be. So, the only thing remains, as you said, that 4, 5, 6, sorry, not 4, 5, 6, and 7 batting spots, where there could be a few surprises if that. So I don't know who. I really want Josh Inglis to start for Australia. So he's someone for the future as well, and he's really in form, can prove lethal, and can be destructive at any time in the game. So, and they don't have like there's obviously there's Maxwell and Stoinis who can be destructive as well. So combine those three together, and I think that's a pretty good lineup. So,
yes.
But before we finish today, last question for you. Australia are in the group stage with England, South Africa, and West Indies. I think that's a pretty good group. So, and then obviously you add 2 from the qualifiers. I think there's Group A teams that are coming into one Group A and one Group B team that's coming into Group 1 with Australia. So let's assume it's Sri Lanka from Group A, and let's assume it's someone like a Bangladesh or Scotland from Group B.
Yeah.
Where do you think? What are Australia's chances? Where do you think they'll finish up? Before you answer, all you have to do is beat South Africa and England. Beating England is a bit, probably the biggest.
All you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you have to do. That's easy.
Probably beating the best white ball side in the last few years.
No worries. Even South Africa, mate. Even South Africa with the likes of Shamsi and their spinners and Rabada and Co. and De Kock and these guys, they're not going to be easy either. And Sri Lanka, with a few good spinners in those conditions too, won't be easy either. I'll probably have Australia in that group, probably just missing out, to be fair, if I'm being realistic.
Yep.
But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if we do perform well, particularly if we get Maxwell, Inglis, if he plays, Stoinis, these guys firing in the middle.
Yep. I'm going for a surprise.
I don't mind our bowling attack.
Yep. I'm going for a surprise, and I'm saying Australia will finish in the semi-finals.
Okay, over who though?
West Indies. West Indies.
So you got West Indies to miss out.
Yeah. Just because, I got West Indies and South Africa. No, sorry. Scratch that. I'll still go Australia to finish in the semi-finals, but I got South Africa to miss out. So you got 2 teams from each group that go into the semi-finals, isn't it?
That's right. That's why it's really difficult.
Yeah. So I got
England, West Indies, Australia, South Africa. They contenders.
That is
it's really tough.
It is
very
tough. It is tough.
That's what I was saying before about the point. The middle order and the bowlers have got to be on their game the whole time.
Oh no! On second thoughts, just scratch that. I don't think Australia will finish up in the semi-finals. I was just looking at the name.
You look very sure of your opinion there, mate.
Yeah, I gave it second thoughts.
We'll know more closer to the tournament, like after IPL and things like that, where teams will be. You'll see who any injuries or things like that. If everyone's fit, firing, and you might have a clearer idea. But as things stand now, the Australian squad is a talented one. But England, West Indies, and South Africa, even Sri Lanka in our group. And if Bangladesh fall into Australia's group as well, we know what Bangladesh did to us recently as well. But in those conditions, no matter who Australia play, if you don't play the slower balls well and play well on the slow pitches, you're going to find it very difficult. So we're going to have to be on our game.
Yeah. All right. That's our recap of the Australian squad announcement that was announced this morning. Let us know what you think. Those who are listening on Spotify, please go to YouTube and subscribe as well. And those who are watching us on YouTube, please go to Spotify and subscribe as well. So let us know in the comments below, what do you think about the Australian squad? And we'll keep reviewing all the squads as they get announced. Thank you so much. Thank you, Charbel.
Thanks, Nash. Thanks everyone for listening and watching.